What's up, everybody? My name is Mike, and I run the Scarlet Standard. We are back with the Rebel Daily Drive. We are live. Today is January 28th. We kind of have a lot to cover. Well, maybe not a lot, but we can kind of go over kind of what happened last night. UNLV was absolutely embarrassed on their home floor by New Mexico. They ended up losing last night, 89-61. This comes after Josh Pastner mentioned to the fans and the fan base during his press conference on Monday that the fans, it's been a struggle. He didn't know the rebuild was this bad. Um, and now you're looking at uh, you're looking at a potential full rebuild for this fan base, and how he did what he did um, after he was able to put on the performance the way that they did last night is kind of a microcosm of what this program is. The UNLV basketball program has struggled for years, especially since they fired head coach Dave Rice. I mean, a lot of fans don't remember. A lot of fans do. A lot of fans don't. I will say that. But a lot of fans don't remember the Tark era, other than the banner hanging up in the stands. So a lot of the common fans now, all they remember is what they see, and that's been the product on the court for the last couple of years now. And since this has happened, since UNLV has essentially lost Lon Kruger. Long story short, to when he went to Oklahoma, the basketball program has kind of never been the same. Rice was able to continually take them to the NCAA tournament, which boosters thought was not enough. He was able to get there, but not win games. He wasn't able to make. Nobody has been able to replicate that 2007 run that Lon made to the Sweet 16, which ironically they should have beat Oregon and should have went to the Elite Eight. And who knows what would have happened if they would have played Florida. But a lot of people talk about what's happened since then. And if we really want to take a look at what's happened kind of since we've had this Tark era, not just the Tark era, but we've had. Why does it look like that? Please hold. There we go. If we really want to look and see kind of what's gone on and what has been, this program for the last couple years, kind of looks like the microcosm that you're looking at now. I mean, Pastner's 10-10. Kruger won 58% of his games. He went 76-55. He was very ridiculed in a sense of he could not get the team over the hump, which was a valid argument. There we go. A valid argument for from the fan base and for a lot of what was going on. Marvin Menzies ended up being 500 when he was at UNLV. It was a complete disaster, though. They fired Dave Rice in January of 2016. Yeah, January of 2016. After he had lost back to the team was ranked in the top 25. They had multiple top 25 wins. They started conference play 0-3 with losses at the Wyoming loss was basically the nail in the coffin for Dave Rice, and they fired him mid-season. Firing him in January ended up being a disaster. They waited till towards after the NCAA tournament to hire Chris Beard. They hired Chris Beard, and Chris Beard left after 2 weeks once Texas Tech opened, and that kind of left UNLV in a flurry and a frenzy. Next thing they ended up with Marvin Menzies, who Marvin Menzies was an absolute dumpster fire. TJ, was brought in during COVID. Never really wanted to be at UNLV. Oh shit, that's not what I wanted. There we go. TJ never really wanted to be at UNLV. He had one foot out the door. He had a decent first season. The second year was an absolute mess. He finished one game under 500, and that was the story from there. He left Iowa State. Kruger was on his staff. Kruger was kind of the cheap, nostalgic hire. Kruger won 18 to 20 games every season as UNLV's head coach. If you go back and look at how Kruger actually did, 18 wins last year, which we'll get into this kind of gets into my topic of, is Pastner the right man to lead this program? There's kind of been a curse of this program since the Dave Rice firing. You have different ADs. It doesn't matter. A lot of flack's gone on Eric Harper for this hire. I don't know if this is necessarily a Harper thing because it was Tina Kunzer Murphy who fired Dave Rice. It was Desiree who hired Kevin. Eric gave Kevin that secret extension that nobody was discussed that came out right before they fired him. And Harper made the Pastner hire. So you've really had three different ADs make three different basketball hires at this point. I was on the fence with Pastner. I like what he's done. I like who he is as a person. I think, he can sell the shit out of any city. He can sell the shit out of any program. It's just a matter of what exactly is the right person for this job. And I think that, there's a lot of different expectations of what this program actually is to where people think it is to where people are stuck that it's Tark era in 1990. I think that there needs to be some type of separation at this point. If you want to be technical, these players on this roster right now, yes, Stacy. Yes, because of the banner, kind of the nostalgic history of what UNLV is, but you don't really know, much about it other than what's told to you. They don't really have the buy-in like they used to. If a person my age, I'm 29, a person my age knows the history of UNLV. It's been around. You see the banners, you learn in school, but any college kid's not going to know what the history of UNLV is. They're going to see the last couple of years of under Kevin. My last 2 years at UNLV were Menzies. If I were a college student and I didn't know UNLV, I would think their basketball program is absolutely terrible. You don't go to the NCAA tournament. It is what it is. There's realistic expectations and there's different expectations and there's the reality of what things are. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion to say, UNLV should be a NCAA tournament team every season or being on the bubble. I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation. But especially in today's day and age where there's not money, really being funneled to what UNLV wants to do, a lot of the attention's on football now. It's going to be interesting to see if, how they carry this football program or this basketball program going forward. What kind of support does Pastner get? Or, what is the solution? If you have a solution of who's going to fire, if you're going to fire a Pastner, who are you going to bring in? Who wants this job? What everybody puts out these unrealistic. I wanted Eric Dolan. I've made that clear. I wanted him as the head coach. He kind of, like you saw, like you've seen, took UNLV to the woodshed last night, coaching wise. Would it be different? I don't know. He had the same pedigree as TJ Otzelberger, and Otzelberger was hit and miss. So it's kind of, very relevant of what the state of the program is, what the support backing is going to be, and, what it really looks like. If you look at Kruger won almost 60% of his games. He won 18, 19, 21, and had a regression year with all the injuries last year at 18. It was time to move on. Nobody's arguing that it was time to move on. But, was Pastner the right hire? I don't know. Is it at this point safe to say that he has a gripe with the fans and fans have a gripe with the program? Absolutely. There's a disconnect somewhere. But you can't call out fans and say, you know what? We need butts in the seats. We need this. We don't play well at home. Well, yeah, fans aren't coming because you don't play well at home. You don't win the games that you're supposed to do. You had arguably momentum in the best crowd of the season against San Diego State, and you lost that game. And you realistically, you blew that game. New Mexico, you flat out played like shit. There's no sugarcoating it. So if you go and you look, with all these arguments of what is actually who's actually going to take a chance and see what it is, and see what this job is, it's not really, you gotta be rational about what you're trying to argue. I think if next year is any similar to this, he's gone. His buyout is so low, he's gone. There's no reason for him there's no reason for him to be the head coach again. I mean, if you look at where Ken Palm projects UNLV the finish, um, expected to finish with a losing record at 14-17. Currently, we're sitting at 10-10, so they expect us to go 4-7 to finish out conference play, which puts you at 9-11 in league, which probably puts you as the 8-9, probably the 9 or 10 seed in the Mountain West tournament, kind of where you're playing that play-in game again. Their tournament resume is decent, but you have too many bad losses at this point. They are one of the few only teams in the country that have multiple quad 1 wins and multiple quad 4 losses. So that's kind of interesting when you look at it from that perspective. But if we're looking at what this team is, and we want to compare it to what Kruger had the year before, because that's always the comparison. What has it been the last couple years? What is this? What is that? Well, if we look at what Kruger had, Kruger played at a pace that was about middle in the country, and people called that boring. They didn't shoot threes very well. They shot 33% as a team. They didn't shoot twos very well. They were towards the bottom as a team. If you look at the breakdown of what this team is, this team that team last year finished 18-15. What's the difference? It's just a different coach, right? Like here's UNLV this year, 127 in twos, which if you're looking at what Kruger's team had last year, 241. So congratulations, you learned how to make a layup, even though it doesn't seem like they really know how to finish through anything. This team is very soft. 3-point shooting, 31% last year, 33% this year. Still don't have shooters. You still don't have the guy that is a sniper that can knock it down when you need a three, or a playmaker that can get you a bucket when you need one. There's no Bryce Hamilton walking through that door. If you go back and you look at this year, 67% free throw shooting, 332 in the country out of 368. Kruger's team last year, 71%. You arguably got to the free throw line. You got to the free throw line of 35. Where is it? 20% of their points last year was free throws. This team is 23. You have very similar teams. The difference is one team is 10-10, and you're calling to fire the coach, and it's the same thing. And you're looking at the team from 2025, and it's the same thing. I don't know what it is with this program. It's last year you had injuries. You can make excuses. They still, if you look at their schedule, they kind of did the same thing that they did last year. If you look at it, they start 3-0 in league. This year they start 5-2 in league. Last year they started 5-2 in league. They went on to lose 5 in a row. Right now they've lost 2 in a row. It's the same exact thing that happened last year. Same exact thing. Where you're looking at, even the records are similar. You're sitting at 5-4 in league. Last year they were 11-9. This year we're 10-10. What really is the difference between Pastner and Kruger at this point, other than one is trying to sell the team and sell the community, and on paper has better talent, when arguably you can argue Jaden Henley and Dedon Thomas are better than anybody on these two teams. So it's very interesting when you look at it from that perspective, and you compare, what was fired. So right now we're looking at 10-10, 5-4 in league. Last year we were 11-9, 5-4 in league. In a very similar spot. You had early wins. You had 2 good wins. You beat San Diego State on the road last year, and you beat Utah State at home. And you had losses to Boise, a blowout loss, very similar to Wyoming, They got their ass kicked by Boise State last year. Then you had another back-to-back blowout loss to Colorado State, and you beat the three dumpster fire teams of Fresno, Air Force, and San Jose. Very similar this year. Beat Air Force, beat Fresno, dumpster fire loss to Wyoming instead of Boise State. Lost to Colorado State. Wasn't a blowout, but you lost. Beat San Jose. You had two wins you probably shouldn't have got with Boise and San Diego State. Or sorry, Boise and Utah State. And then you lose to the two teams. You lose to two good teams, just like they did last year. They lost to Wyoming, which they probably shouldn't have. They lost to New Mexico by 2. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, it's a carbon copy of what happened last year, what this team was last year. There's really been no difference of 2025 and 2026. So yeah, it's very, very interesting to see when you look at it from that comparison of what this team is, where this team is, who's calling for what. It's the same accounts, calling for certain things. This is the worst team in UNLV history. Well, if you really look at it on paper, it's a carbon copy of last year's team. Is last year's team a worst team in UNLV history? How about the year before? Let's look at 2024. Very similar. Finished what? 21-13. Very similar again. Lost Sandy. They started 0-1, 1-1, 1-2. They started 2-4 in league. Then rattled off 5 in a row to go to 7-4. Lost to Reno. By the way, if anybody caught Pastner's presser last night, I know I posted it. There's a lot of people that watched it. I know that there was a bunch of people watching on the live stream last night that I had. He did the cardinal sin, by the way. He called Reno, Nevada. We don't do that. He didn't acknowledge them as UNR or Reno. He did the cardinal sin. He called them Nevada. We don't. That everybody should know that's a no. Anyways, off topic. Besides the point. But you look at how 2024 went. They lost one, rattled off 5 more in a row, finished 12-6, lost in the semis to San Diego State. Didn't have to play that first round game. So if you arguably, they've regressed the last 2 years from the progression that Kruger had going from year 2, where they won 19 games, went 7-11 in league, to his progress in 2024 to where they went 12-6 in league. The last 2 years they peaked in 2024, and then the regression that's happened the last 2 years, and this includes 2 different coaches. So there's really no difference of what, if you go back and look, here's all Kruger's teams, right? We're looking at TJ Otzelberger. We have Otzelberger. We have Simon. You have Dave Rice as well. But if you go back and you look at these teams, like, they're all very, very similar. They're all built pretty much the same. Don't know why the roster makeups are pretty. You can just see it. They're all pretty much the same. I don't understand what they're looking at when they build rosters, what they're looking at with construction, what they think is fit. If they have somebody building the roster for them, if we want to be technical, I think Deshaun Henry came in with Kruger's first staff. And if all of these teams are the same and he's your lead recruiter and he's, building out these teams for Pastner, and obviously Pastner has a say and recruits these kids, but, the trend is there. They're all these teams are the same. There's only one connection between the 2 coaching staffs. And if that's what they're building and that's how they're going and that's what this is going to look like, then obviously there needs to be something in that aspect that needs to be changed. Let's talk about a little bit the potential loss of Tyron Jones. So Pastner mentioned post game, Tyron Jones went up for a dunk or a set play, the second play of the game. Heard a pop in his shoulder, which was the same shoulder he hurt in the offseason that cost him his whole offseason, and almost cost him the first couple games of the regular season. He heard a pop apparently in that shoulder. They don't know what the extent is of that injury. I'm sure that's going to be a big question for Pastner's pressers tomorrow. But as you can see, a lot of the lineups, are built with Tyron Jones. So what happens with Tyron if he's out for a long term? Obviously, that's going to be a huge loss for this team. Do they go Stefan? Do they keep? I think they need to make a change at the five as well. Don't know if it's Bernardi was terrible. Bernardi was terrible last night, but do you go Bernardi and you go smaller? If you look at, plus minus and the offensive rating, you know, the best lineup is the small lineup with Bernardi and Tyron, with DGL, Fleming, and Kamani. But Pastner mentioned last night Kamani needs to play better, and when Kamani and Tyron are on the floor together, there's no spacing because there's no shooting on the floor. So do you go with somebody different? You know, is Walter Brown going to be more of an option in the rotation? Losing Logi is really hurt the spacing in the mindset of this team. Um, Not the mindset, the offensive identity of this team. I asked Pastner last night, what is the identity of this team? And he said that they want to be the running rebels and get out and run. And they haven't done that the last two games, and that's why they weren't able to take care of business. And I followed that up with, is there something schematically that San Diego State, New Mexico did that other schools didn't? And he really didn't answer. He kind of answered it, kind of said no. Um, I was kind of the only one, other than maybe one or two, that asked them basketball questions. I forget who it was. Wasn't Paloma. I think it was the girl from Channel 8. Asked a very good question to Pastner of, is this a locker room issue? She asked, her question was basically, you've used injuries, you've used sickness. What's going on? Is there a locker room problem? What's going on? And she asked the same question to Isaac and Dre, and Dre just said his answer was they're just not consistent. Pastner's answer was that there's nothing going on. So is there something going on in that locker room? I'm not trying to speculate, but obviously those questions don't come out of nowhere, and you've seen what's been going on the last couple games, and maybe you've seen the in and outs of Nas Cunningham. Was it really an illness that was going on? Was he not around the team? Was it an issue with Pastner? What's your start? Well, it's all going to play itself out, but it's going to be interesting to see what kind of happened, where this goes, what this looks like, and how this team finishes. They're very mentally soft. They don't finish well through contact. Mountain West plays really physical compared to non-conference play, and it's beginning to show. And some of these games, especially the higher end teams of San Diego States, New Mexico's, the Renos, the Grand Canyons, they're big, they're physical, they're going to outplay you. You're going to hostile environments, which may actually benefit this team, because it seems like these team plays, obviously, based off of their record, they play better on the road. And is it, I kind of had a conversation with Neverett before the game yesterday, and I brought up, does this team play better because there's more fans and they're more amped when student sections are talking shit and they like to answer? Maybe. And it's also, is the Thompson Mack environment so dead that they don't know how to play in it? Because if you really look at it, the losses that they had, other than the players era, at home, not really the best environment to play in. Jack Jones Classic, that probably had 1,000 fans, where they lost to Tennessee State. And Wyoming, that their students were on break, and the announced attendance for that game was 2,300 people. But they go to Memphis, rowdy environment, win that game. They go to Stanford, rowdy environment, they win that game. They go to Utah State, student section, the herd, talking shit, bashing Tyron Jones for getting hurt. That was, everybody could hear. They won that game. So it's very interesting to see the how they play in the different environments and where they go. They won that San Jose, but San Jose's terrible. They have to go. If we look, I'll pull up KenPom again, but if we go back to what their schedule looks like, Reno is going to be a hostile environment, right? Fresno, probably a dead environment. Grand Canyon at home. Who knows what the Rebel fans are going to do? They're running promos for these two games to get people in the door. They have $5 tickets for Grand Canyon, and they have 2 for 10 tickets to sit up top, 2 for 20 for the lower bowl against San Jose. I mean, they're trying to get fans, but who knows, right? And then hostile environment, Boise State. Do they win that game? Do they not? I mean, Boise State has, I guess BJ Rains has really put it out that their fan base has been absolutely terrible and their student section has been bad. So maybe they probably lose that game, right? Air Force, we'll see. Another dead gym. That you have Grand Canyon and you have San Diego State on the road. Maybe, they steal one or two of those, but because of that, the way that they play. But that's just, the difference of what this team is. It's very hard to gauge and understand, where these guys come from, what this team is, what the future holds for this team, what it really looks like. And they've been such a roller coaster. I mean, everybody thought football was a roller coaster. My Lord, basketball's been worse. And the only difference is you're able to get over football because they were winning. Basketball's not, and it's just apparent. I mean, you can't make the excuse that you don't have Miles Shea anymore. Miles Shea has been out for all 20 games. At the beginning of the year, you recruited and you said that Isaac Williamson was brought in to be a point guard. Now, last night, you're reverting to the fact that you're saying that he's a shooting guard. He's a scoring guard that is not a point guard. Is that because of your development and your staff's development? Or is that because he's an undersized shooting guard and you figured that out when he got to campus and you didn't want to admit that you didn't have a point guard? What is – and I will say this as well. The people that are talking about Miles Shea probably transferring out at the end of the season, what is his value right now? No P4 is going to want him. No offense to the kid. The kid's a great player. But, what's his value? He just missed the full season. He's not going anywhere. Unless, Pastner forces him out or something like that happens. He's not going anywhere. And I think, those fans that just sometimes just speak shit out there like that, it's just like they really don't know what the hell they're talking about. And it's funny to see that. Like, let's talk a little bit about what happened and what this box score looked like against New Mexico. I know the game was pretty easy to tell what happened, how bad it was. But, Thomas Abdullah, the 23-year-old freshman who was a former pro, he finished with 18 and 11, but he had 16 of their first, I would say probably, I don't remember the exact stat, but it was like 16 of their first 25 points. He finished with 18 and 11 last night. They ended up with 4 in double figures. They absolutely dominated UNLV right from the jump. It was turnover, bucket, turnover, leak out, turnover. It was like six of their first 8 possessions were turnovers. Then UNLV started like they made a spurt to cut it to 4. Then, Olin made an adjustment, got it back up to double digits. Pastner tried to call timeout. The players didn't really respond. You got, 1 minute from Tyron Jones before he went out with his shoulder. You got absolutely nothing from Kamani Hamilton. He finished with 2 points, only took 4 shots. Had some cheap fouls. You got Stefan, who had 7 and 5, but a couple of those buckets came late. He didn't really make an impact. He was by far the worst player on the floor. He was minus 31. DGO was in foul trouble most of the night. He finished in single digits, had 8. He had 3 rebounds. And, you need more from DGO. I think, this team wants to get into you defensively. They want to play, aggressive. But there are sometimes you have to know the difference of what officiating crew you had. You had an officiating crew last night that for all 3, they very heavily favored home teams, and they very heavily favored getting to the free throw line. Home teams getting to the free throw line, and you weren't able to cash in on that. And that's some things that you need to buy into, and you need to understand what crews are what, and take advantage of it. You would think they would shoot more than 17 free throws. They made their free throws last night because Tyron Jones didn't take any. This is what it looks like without Tyron Jones. No offense to the kid. The kid's a hell of a talent. But, when he shoots 2 for 10, that inflates this number. It makes the team look a lot worse than it actually is. Howie gave you his typical 7-6. They need somebody to step up, grab this team by the balls, and be a second scorer next to DGO. If they don't have somebody step up and be a second scorer with DGO, then this team is in trouble. It's just, that's just the easiest way to explain it. And yeah. Bernarby, nothing. Played 9 minutes. Didn't even play when it was a blowout. Pastner, left him on the bench. Walter Brown, I thought played decent. He had 7-5, which is arguably his best on one of his best statistical games as a Rebel. They're gonna really need him and Al Green to get their shit together and hit some shots. Shout out to Al Green for extending the 3-point streak, which also, by the way, if you are going to call yourself a reporter and talk about UNLV and work for one of the news publications that are in this town, you should ask questions about the basketball game, not ask Pastner, did you have the 3-point streak on your mind? Or ask the players if they had the 3-point streak on their mind. Like, what the fuck kind of question is that? Like, don't do that. That's a little that's ridiculous at that point. Like, fans want to know about the game. They don't care about the three. I mean, they care about the 3-point streak. That's why a lot of them stayed when the game was 20 points, a 20-point blowout. But at the end of the day, it's a novelty streak. I love the streak. It's great. But they just lost by 30. They got manhandled all night. Really think the question they want to hear is, what did you think of keeping the 3-point streak alive? Like, my God. Anyways, Nas finally made an appearance. First time he's played in 4 games. He had 9 points, which was his third highest scoring output as a Rebel. Obviously, Pastner mentioned a bunch of times that he was one of the only bright spots last night, and they need to reevaluate whether he's going to get playing time or not. And I think that you need his offense as much as he may be a black hole sometimes. If you can rein in and tell him, rein in and say, don't shoot every time you touch the ball. Be smart, be efficient, and in the offensive, semi-ish offensive system that he tries to run, and don't give up 30 points on the other side of the court. They need a scoring boost. They need something, and if they're not going to get it from an Al Green or from a Kamani Hamilton or from a Howie Fleming, who probably, instead of being about 8 to 10 points, probably needs to be about 12 to 14. It's going to be interesting to see. Here's a good comment right here. Really think Nas is more talented than everyone on the court when he plays. Don't know what the problem is there. I think there's 2 problems. And I think if Noah, you've watched a lot of UNLV games, I think there's 2 problems. One, he shoots the ball every time he touches it. And 2, you saw everybody's this team, I'm not saying this team is world beaters on defense. But if you're going to touch and shoot the ball every time you touch it, you need to at least be able to guard somebody. And there were multiple plays, even in a 25-point game last night, he got blown past. So I think it's something on the defensive side of the ball that's keeping him off the floor. But I think they're starting to realize that they really need his offense on the floor. So if his offense is fine, then I think the defense will be fine. They'll live with the defense. And it's kind of like I just said, if he can get you 10 or 15 and not give up 20 on the other end. I mean, last night he played 10 minutes. He was I know it was late and it was a blowout, but his plus minus was 0. So he scored 9, gave up 9. If you can keep it around that, or keep it within, striking range, unless, he goes for 30, then obviously I hope he does. But if you can keep him somewhat balanced, I think he'll be fine. This question is, what is Pastner's contract like? Let's see. That's a good question. So his contract is a 5-year deal that is $4.8 million in total. He makes $500,000 this year, $1 million, $1 million in 2026, 2027, and 2027, 2028. 2029 or 2028 through 2030 goes up to 1.15 million. His buyout is if he's terminated without cause, he's owed 75% of his remaining base salary and any media money that he would have been owed. If he leaves, uh, if he turns this around and he gets a bigger Power Four job, his buyout is $3 million, reducing by $250,000 each season he is UNLV's coach. Also included in his contract is includes 2 cars for his personal spouse and personal use, a country club membership, and a suite inside Thomas and Mack. He also has his bonus clause in his contract is $50,000 if he's retained on April 1st, 2027 and 2029, and a $30,000 signing bonus and various performance-based incentives. So if you buy him out, so I know JC, that you are one of the ones who are talking about him getting let go at the end of this season. Let's take a look real quick. So he would have 4.3 million left on his contract. If you fired him, it would be a $3.2 million buyout if you fired him at the end of the season. Obviously, like I mentioned, it goes down from there depending on how many years he stays. So he has a $3 million buyout if you are realistically trying to fire him at this point, which I don't think is going to happen. But obviously you never know. It could be that much of a disaster that they do it. I don't know. He seems like he's in over his head a little bit. I think he'll be fine. He's going to sell this team. He's probably trying to raise money. We'll see what the actual fundraising, what the NIL looks like with some of these players he's able to bring in and who he's able to keep. There's a sign that he can keep Tyron Jones, which I know he has a very good relationship with Deshaun Henry, but Deshaun Henry may need to go at this point if he's the roster builder. Do they bring in a GM for basketball like a Lee Davis? It's going to be very interesting what they invest in this team. Lee Davis has done wonders for, she helped with getting Calandra. She helped with getting Jackson Arnold. Do they need to bring somebody in like that for football? I'm sorry, for basketball? More than likely they do. But it'll be that's definitely not what I wanted. It'll be very interesting to see what route they goes. I think he needs more support, and I'm not saying fan support will help, obviously, but what I'm saying is I think he needs more support in a sense of he can't be a recruiter, can't be a salesman, can't be an NIL guy, go raise money, do everything like he's saying he did. I think you need to go get a GM. You need to get a good support staff around him. You need to get somebody who knows basketball. I mean, whether it's a former player who's connected to the program still, whether it's a business person, it can't be somebody like Cottrell's mom, their kids on the team. It has to be somebody who's actually, I'm not saying she didn't do a good job, but someone who has ties to the program that can get kids to come here and raise money. Because obviously what the money was raised before was not enough, and it wasn't enough to keep certain guys. His buyout's a little bit different than what Kruger's was. Obviously, he has a very heavy backloaded deal. That's strictly because of his buyout at Georgia Tech. So he is one of the lower paid coaches in the conference. I think he actually is the lowest paid coach in the conference, especially this year. I think it's going to be interesting. It really depends on what they feel is best for the school. Do they feel they need to invest more money in basketball, or are they really fully focused on football? And in the past it was football that was holding them back from going to Power Four. I mean, maybe it's basketball that's holding them back at this point. It's interesting to see where this goes. Realistically, how many guys do you want back, and how many do I see coming back? If I can answer that. Realistically, I think you see. Let's look at the roster real fast of who. I like all the players. I mean, as people, I think they're really, you know. Let's see. I don't think you keep Dre's a great player. I don't think you can keep him. I think he's going to have a great year, probably be all conference, and then go back to a power four. Don't know what level, what power four, but someone's going to come calling and take him. I think. I would assume Logi lost the season, so he'll probably be back. You lose Kamani, who's a senior. Howie's a senior. Green's a senior. I would assume they're going to bring back Mason because they did, redshirt him. So I would assume that there was a deal in place for him to come back next year. Um, I would keep Isaac. Walter Brown will be gone. Obviously, I think you bring back Miles Shea. Um, Nas and Stefan are going to be interesting. If somebody else is Nas going to transfer again to get to a school that's going to give him playing time, we'll see. Also, keep in mind that they're going to have, according to Pastner, they're going to have enough money to fill 2 more spots next year. So instead of having 13, they'll have 15. So I would say Isaac returns. I would say Mason returns. I would say Logi and Miles Shea probably return. I think you probably lose Nas. I think you probably lose Emmanuel Stefan. I think you have a really hard conversation about Jacob and Arby. Great player, great kid, gotten a lot better, but is he just at this point is he going to take the next step to be a rotation piece? Is he just going to be a guy that holds a roster spot? We'll see. Obviously, I think Mason stays because they redshirted him. The two big question marks I would say is probably, do they have enough money to keep DGL, and do they have enough money to keep Tyron Jones? But I think if realistically you're looking at probably Mason coming back, I would say probably Isaac coming back. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes, but just my opinion. But I would think maybe Mason or Isaac probably stays. I would say Miles Shea probably as well. So if you could have a core like you mentioned of a Miles Shea, because he'll have a redshirt year, so you don't know what his true value is on the open market because he missed this year. He's probably going to want a year to prove himself, and he's probably going to stay. So I would say you have a core of Miles Shea, Mason Adabon, Laji Dembele, and probably Isaac. So you have I think you'll have very good guard play next year. They're probably, they're going to bring in he's going to have to bring in a scorer to replace DGL, I think. Obviously, you're going to need to replace Howie and Kamani. You're probably going to replace 4 or 5 starters, to be honest. But if you could keep those guys and maybe keep either Stefan and Jacob, or what kind of happens with that, you do have a good core of 5 or 6 that you can keep and build around. So you're still going to have, if let's just say you bring back, let's just say you lose DGL and you keep Tyron. So you'll have Tyron 1, Adabon 2. Let's just say Jacob comes back as 3, Isaac 4, Miles Shea. That's a core 5 right there. If Nas stays, you have 6, and then you have Stefan, that's 7. You're still bringing in 8 new guys to fill out the roster. So it's going to be interesting to see what construction they have, who they keep, who they want to keep, who buys in the Pastner system, and what future he has. It goes back to, if they keep him, obviously, but if they're able to keep the guys just coming back, they have a very good core, and you're still adding 8 pieces to it. So if they're increasing money like he says, if they're increasing NIL, they're going to have 2 more roster spots. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they build it, what they do, what they have. I think they have a very good foundation. He just needs guys to be bought in. I think Walter Brown, late addition, good kid, just filled a roster spot. really. I mean, Al Green didn't has not. He's a great kid, great story, plays hard, works hard. Just didn't fit in. I mean, I don't know if he just didn't fit in. Didn't what had happened there? Howie and Kamani, you're losing two starters. So I mean, you have, and then if you lose DGL, you're losing three starters, but you're getting Logi back, who probably would have started over Tyron Jones. Honestly, Tyron Jones has been great, but Tyron Jones should be coming off the bench in a realistic situation. You're starting Stefan, or you're starting Tyron and Logi with Howie, Kamani, and DGL. I mean, next year, just spitballing, right? You start without pieces they haven't brought in, obviously. Miles at the point. You start if Stefan comes back, you start Stefan at the 5. You have any kind of and you start Logi at the 4. You're looking for a 2 and a 3, and then you have a bench potentially of Stefan if he doesn't start over Jacob, Isaac, uh, Mason, and whoever else they bring in. So it's going to be very interesting. The roster construction is going to be very interesting, I think. What was I missing? Oh, let's talk about Friday night. So Friday night, obviously, like I mentioned, they hit on the road to play Reno. Reno is a very good team. They are currently sitting. What is their record right now? They are. Reno is 15-6. They are 10-2 at Lawler. They had a crazy. I don't know if you guys tuned in. If you weren't at the game, if you tuned in to the end of that Reno Grand Canyon game, Grand Canyon basically led wire to wire. Reno was down 5 with 19 seconds to go. Grand Canyon, they score. Grand Canyon misses a free throw. Grand Canyon fouls a Reno shooter with zero point 0.8 seconds left on the clock. Down 3, shooting a 3. Kid makes all 3, sends the game to overtime, and Reno squeaks out a 66-60 victory. It was that was a crazy game. I watched it while I was sitting up in media row. It was a wild ending. Reno is led by Corey Camper Jr. He averages 16 a night. Tyshawn Comer as well, 13, and Elijah Price, 12. Um, Camper's been good. It's about the same conference play, 16 a game, but their scoring's kind of bounced out after that. You have one guy with 12, one guy with 11, 9, 7, 7, 7. So very interesting to see what do you call it? How this team is built. Let's take a look real quick. Let me share this real fast. Why does it do that? I don't want that either. There we go. Yeah, your Camper Price. Price is their big man. He averages about 12 and 8, 12 and 9. He could be a problem. He's 6'9", 215. What did he have last night? He got in foul trouble last night. Only played 24 minutes at 6.6 rebounds, but he had double doubles in 5 of the previous 6 games before that. So he's really been their focal piece inside. Corey Camper. He only had 8 last night, so they were able to survive him playing terribly, shooting 3 for 13. But he had 20, 19, 23, 14, 31. So when he plays well, he plays well in spurts. But when he has duds, no, I'll answer that one in a second. He typically has good spurts, has a bad game, good spurts, has back-to-back bad games. So it's going to be interesting to see. Ken Palm, where you at? They play at a very similar style to UNLV. Actually, they play at a faster pace than what UNLV does. They get a majority of their points from twos, just like UNLV, but they're very evenly distributed. They're a very good basketball team. Ken Palm has them as 63. If UNLV were to win this game, looking at it from a net ranking standpoint, which I'm probably the only one that looks at these at this point because I like to see what kind of competition this UNLV is playing. This would be another quad one game for UNLV if they're able to win this game. This is a quad three game for Reno. Um, Reno is 64, so if you look at it from that perspective, they're right on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. They really need to win these next couple of games. They have a stretch coming up where they play UNLV, then they have a quad one chance against Boise, another quad three game, then a quad one game. It's basically quad three, quad one, quad three, quad one, quad three, quad one. For them. So it's a good opportunity for them to get a decent win. I don't know why this ad's funny to me. I had to like double take of who that was. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of matchup this is, how this team responds. I think you're going to have, if they respond like they did against Colorado after getting their blown out by Wyoming, and how they did against Colorado State. Colorado State, that game was tight the whole game. UNLV led for a majority of it. They blew that game late and lost by 8. They were winning with like 5 minutes to go too. So we'll see. I think they'll respond. I think Pastner will have them bought in. I'll kind of get more of a vibe of what they're at tomorrow. But I think this is another key spot. Does this team respond, or does it domino down to the being another blowout, a potential loss to another school? I mean, as much as I hate it, Reno's a better team, unfortunately. Noah, let's see. To answer your question, his question to me was, how much more does Olin get paid at UNM? I thought he was a done deal to go to UNLV, so I'm not sure what happened there. But he has a 5-year deal at New Mexico that's $6.5 million. He makes 1.2 this year, 1.25 next year, 1.3 year 3, 1.35, 1.4. It's a $50,000 raise in between years. Let me see if I can get more details on this contract. He has a $2.65 million buyout year 1, $2 million year 2. Then it drops to 1.1 year 3, 560 year 4. So he has a smaller buyout than what Pastner has. His incentive, actually, I'll just share this because this is interesting. His contract's very interesting. He has similar perks to what Pastner has as well. It's a lot of incentives for top 25. He gets incentives for being in Ken Palm top 50, which is interesting to see. If he $50,000 per win, he only gets 125 if they win national championship. National Mount West Coach of the Year, $25K. If he accepts a head coaching while under contract, school must schedule. So he also had New Mexico also put a good clause in his contract too, of if he leaves, this the new school he goes to has to sign a 2-year home and home series, or pay UNM $250,000 additional to whatever he's owed on his buyout. UNM would also have to to forego the home and home, and the obligation would be fulfilled. So it depends on where he goes. If he were to go to, that's a good contract. He got a really good UNM airtight this contract, gave him a really good deal. Guessing his roster isn't worth as much. I'm not sure what New Mexico's NIL is. I don't know much about New Mexico NIL. I know that they don't raise as much as UNLV does. I know that for a fact, because in 2024 their club, their NIL incentive raised 9 million, which is not close to what UNLV's raised. So I don't know. I you're probably right though. He's probably not. It's probably not anywhere near what UNLV's is. It's just it's the difference is when you're in a group of five. I think the difference is you need guys who buy in and want to play your way and buy in and want to compete. It's the same way San Diego State's been good for every year. I mean, shit, San Diego State has two guys from Vegas that should be on UNLV's roster that Kruger didn't get. Um, so I know Farrow for a fact was going to transfer to UNLV if a different coach was hired. I heard that from multiple sources. Um, I also know that he's being paid. Like for example, I know Farrow Compton's making 200. At least last year. I don't know if it's changed, but I know he is making somewhere between 250 and 300,000 at San Diego State, and he doesn't even start. And I know that because I have sources on that. So it's interesting to see some of the levels of these kids. I mean, San Diego State's able to keep all these kids because their NIL money is probably the highest in the league. It's probably them and Grand Canyon is outrageous as well. They're completely funded by Colangelo. Grand Canyon. It's going to be, if you're looking at the new Mountain West, Grand Canyon and New Mexico are the class of the league in basketball. UNLV is the class in the league of football. New Mexico fans need to pump their brakes on the football side. You had one good year. I mean, people say that all the time about UNLV, but you had one good year. But there's levels to it. Eck is a great coach, but they're going to be just fine. I'll do a more deeper dive. I'll do a pregame show on Friday. Probably won't record tomorrow because there's not much really to talk about. The girls lost today, which Lindy's having a down year. She has 2 conference losses this year. They lost to a New Mexico team that's not as talented as them. She actually had the most. She actually had. This is a new one. Transfer from. Yeah, he's a big boy. It's going to be interesting to see how they play him, and what fits in and what where they play Thomason. Thomason's he's a good fit, but let me see. I know for a fact they want to play. They want to play Boyd at guard, and they want to move Thomas back to tackle. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fill out that line. My guess is Tolo probably starts at center. He played center last year for New Mexico a little bit. He played 3 games at center for New Mexico State last year. So my guess is he starts at center, and then you have Boyd and at one guard. You probably have Thomason and Thomas as your tackles, and then the other guard's probably open to either the freshmen that are coming in or I forget the other line transfer. I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, the kid from Pitt. And Cal, Jackson Brown. So it's probably going to be something along that line. I know, obviously your running back room is going to – we can talk about football a little bit, actually. I have a few minutes. We can talk about football a little bit. I think you're going to have a quarterback competition. I know Jackson's Dan's guy, but so is Orgy. You have Orgy's a year in Dan's system. So I think you're going to have a quarterback battle between Arnold and Orgy. It's probably very similar to what happened last year. Running back room, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I would assume Darian Jones or Cameron Williams take over that third back role that Kayvon Lee had. It would be the third guy with Kayvon Lee and Jalen Glover. Jalen Glover, and then one of those two, or Skylar Leslie, if he can get on the field. That depending on how they can play it. Wide receiver room's a question mark. Obviously, you brought in the kid from Kentucky and Clemson. He's probably more of a slot guy. You have Irvin, who's a slot guy. You have Caden McGee, who's an outside guy. Football, what do I think our record will be? I have to look at the schedule again. I know Cal's probably, like you said, Cal's probably their toughest game. I don't know much about their opponents yet. I haven't done a lot of research on them. I know Cal's has a new coach and they brought in a lot of talent. I know UNT lost a bunch of talent, but they also brought in a lot of talent. Um, I need to see their schedule. Hold on. Let's see. I think they beat Memphis. Uh, I think week 1, week 2 is basically your group of 5. I think. Um, Playoff eliminator. UNT and Memphis. I mean, you can eliminate both of them right there. Akron's going to be no pushover. We saw how Miami of Ohio went. Miami of Ohio was a good team, not a great team. I thought they weren't very good offensively, which turned out to be right. They had a very good defense that got them to squeak into a bowl game. But I would assume Akron's probably something like that. Going to that Eastern time zone, going to be interesting. You have Air Force, Hawaii, New Mexico on the road. Those are Air Force has been down, but those are 3 tough places to play. You would expect you play San Jose on the road as well. You would expect them to be better, so it's going to be interesting. I think. I still think they win 11. I don't think they lose a game. I said they were going to go 11-1 last year with their loss. With their only loss being to Boise State, and I had them beating UCLA. So I think they're going to be. They have to if Dan wants to do anything and go to a P4 like he wants to, because we all know he wants to. He has to make the CFP, and I think if they have a loss next year, I think it only happens. There's 2 games that happens in. It's either Cal or at New Mexico. I don't think they lose New Mexico though. I think Dan's gonna. If they were to play, if UNLV was going to play New Mexico in the Mountain West Championship, they would have blew them out if they had a second chance to play them again. I don't think they shouldn't have lost the first time. They would have got blown out the second time. But I think you're sitting at. The only other thing I need to see is how the weeks line up because conference scheduling has not been released yet. So do they have weird stretches where they go back to back, weeks on the road? It's hard to gauge on that. I think they can go 4-0 in non-con though. I think they're a better team than Cal. I think they're going to be prepared, and I think if you come into that Cal game 3-0 on the fringe, if not receiving votes, if not ranked in the top 25, there's no reason like Cal wouldn't be either. I mean, what's Cal got before UNLV? Cal opens with UCLA at Berkeley. They play at Syracuse. They play Wagner. Then they play Clemson right before UNLV. So Cal could be, if they're somehow 4-0, Cal's going to be ranked. Coming off a win against Clemson, it's a matter of can they get out of that Clemson game healthy? How are they going to play after that Clemson game? I need to see the rest of the schedule plays out. I would assume Reno is probably the last week of the season, as it typically is. So, you don't want my biggest thing is you don't want a funky back to back of you go to New Mexico and then you go to Hawaii. I think you're gonna because that could be a trap. Hawaii is hard to beat at home anyway. They play like Alabama at home, so yeah, that's how I honestly see it. And yes, I agree. Taz Reddix is a really good receiver. I think he's gonna be a stud. I do want to see. It's very interesting that Troy Amire went to New Mexico. I've heard different things of what happened there. Don't know what's true. Don't know what's not true. I heard he was an issue in the locker room, but because there's no reason why Dan wouldn't want him back if he had eligibility left. I guess if there wasn't an issue, and the other, when I saw Jaden Bradley entered the portal too, I didn't I didn't think he had eligibility left either, but we'll see. It'd be interesting. Um, but yeah, I think they beat NIU. NIU will be better. They'll beat UTEP. They'll beat Wyoming. I don't see them losing a game at home. If they lose a game at home, it's the Cal, I think. But I don't see them losing a game at home other than maybe Cal. So, I mean, that puts you at 5 wins right there, if not 6. Um, then it's a matter of how this road schedule plays out, in my opinion. I think they'll beat Air Force on the road. They'll probably beat San Jose on the road. It's just a matter of where the Hawaii New Mexico game land. If they schedule the Hawaii game towards the end of the season, or the New Mexico game towards the end of the season, like they typically have been, I think you're going to be in a good spot. That could be a massive implication game because keep in mind too. I saw this yesterday, and I don't know how many people have seen this. They let it slip that you don't have to win your conference to be the G5. You don't have to win your conference to be the G5 rep anymore in the CFP. You seem to be ranked. So they're sitting with an early season loss to Cal, and they went out, and they're still sitting in this the highest ranked G5. They'll be all right. Or if they lose week 1 to Memphis and then win 11 straight and then go win the Mountain West Championship, if they're still ranked, they're gonna have a good case. And I think that that's gonna kill the Pac-12. I think there's no guaranteed bid. I mean, there's a guaranteed bid, but there's it's about who's highest ranked. So when these polls are favoring the AAC, and you have Memphis that was ranked last year. You had UCF who was ranked for a while last. I'm sorry, UCF, not UCF, USF who was ranked for a while last year. You had Navy who was ranked at one point. You had those schools beating up on each other. North Texas was ranked at one point as well. James Madison as well. It's not going to matter if you win your league or not. I mean, they should win the Mountain West. Not saying like that, but you just need to be ranked at this point. So win the games you're supposed to win. Don't if they can afford to lose one, lose the Cal, but don't lose a conference game. I think it's going to be. What'd you say? I think a lot of locker room problems are due to so many transfers. Really like the selection. I think it's yes and no. They put out this impression that they like each other, but I think a lot of it has to do with some of the decision making. Like I know the offensive line really didn't get along with Calandria last year, from what I was told, which was surprising to me because they always seemed like in good gracious in the media. You have good relationships. Like I know certain players stayed at UNLV because other players stayed at UNLV. They wanted to be a package deal. So I'm not going to name names on that one. There were a couple like that though. So it's yes and no. I think that when you have a lot of guys come in and you have to mesh a locker room, I think, yes, they brought in a good selection of guys and transfers this year, but you also have a lot of guys coming back. You're not bringing in 50 new guys. You're bringing in 26 freshmen who've been around a lot of these guys in the locker room. And then they're only bringing in, I think, 18 transfers. So, between the 26 freshmen and the 18 transfers, you have 44 new guys, not 60. So you have a good foundation. And you have to keep in mind, too, they only had, a lot of guys stayed but didn't play under Barry. You have the guys that have been here for 2 coaching staffs now that now have more familiarity with this coaching staff going into year 2, so they stayed. As much as and the biggest thing is Shear coming back. So with Shear coming back, some of the guys that were recruited by Barry that stayed now have familiarity again with some of the coaching staff. So I think it's a mix of that. I think it's can be very interesting to see how they mesh. I think a lot of it's going to hinge on who they start at quarterback, and how they fit in the locker room. If Arnold loses a job to Orgy, what does that turn out to be? Things like that I think are going to play big into it. But I will be back live with a pregame show on Friday. Because there's not much really else to talk about right now. It's been kind of a quiet time with all the recruiting, really dead period ending for football. Basketball, we kind of dove into the Pastner stuff. To make sure that you are like and subscribe to our page. Follow me on all social media. at SS_media LV. I'm on all platforms with the same handle. And if you are not seen it yet, we are live on. We have our own site. We have forums. We have, I dropped a forum question today of should Pastner, what should happen with Pastner. If you've already been subscribed to my work, you have a login. Just make sure you set it up. But yeah, I want you guys. I want to be the number one place to be for Rebel news and Rebel talk. My site is the-scarlet-standard.com. Also, if you need any Vegas gear or any UNLV gear, or you want to support me and buy some Scarlet Standard gear, check out vegasvarsity.com. Use my promo code SSM10 for 10% off any order. Any of those proceeds from those orders go directly to me. So you guys would be funding my adventures to go on road games and things like that, be able to help to get you guys as much coverage as possible. Thank you guys as always for tuning in, and go Rebels.